Can your Mercedes transmission reach 500,000 miles without a rebuild? Yes. Your dealer is counting on you never finding out how. A transmission that never needs rebuilding generates zero repair revenue across its entire service life. The protocol that prevents the failure has existed for 2 decades. It has never appeared on a dealer service menu. Today, every step gets exposed. Stay until the end. The final entry costs under $40 and prevents the $2,000 repair your dealer is waiting to perform. Let us get into it. Number 10. Stop treating transmission fluid like it lasts forever. Lifetime fluid. Those 2 words have confused a lot of luxury car owners. Your Mercedes may shift beautifully today. Reverse engages immediately. There's no warning on the dashboard, and nothing is dripping onto the driveway. That does not mean the fluid inside the transmission stays healthy forever. Automatic transmission fluid works hard. It lubricates moving parts, carries heat, helps operate the gearbox, and keeps internal components working smoothly. Every journey adds heat cycles. Every shift adds work. Every mile adds more time to the fluid. Mercedes has specified transmission oil and filter changes on many models, but the correct interval depends on the exact car and gearbox. That detail matters. The 7 G-tronic family alone shows why guessing is dangerous. Earlier and later versions can use different fluid specifications and different service intervals. This is not a maintenance job where one number fits every Mercedes ever built. Find the schedule for your exact model, year, and transmission. Then follow it. One more thing matters here. A clean fluid service also gives the workshop a chance to inspect what is sitting in the pan. A light coating of normal wear material is very different from large pieces of metal or heavy debris. That inspection can reveal whether you're maintaining a healthy gearbox or discovering trouble that already started. The worst time to begin caring about transmission fluid is after the gearbox starts slipping. If the transmission feels perfect, that is exactly when you want to protect it. Waiting for a harsh shift before considering maintenance is like waiting for an engine knock before thinking about oil. You may no longer be preventing trouble. You may be diagnosing damage. Fresh, correct fluid cannot make worn parts new, but it gives a healthy transmission the conditions it was designed to work with. Old, overheated, contaminated fluid makes that job harder. Can any service routine guarantee 500,000 miles? No, that is an extreme target, not a promise. Manufacturing differences, driving conditions, age, previous ownership, and normal wear still matter. The goal is to remove as much unnecessary stress as possible before it becomes expensive. That starts with recognizing transmission fluid as a service item instead of a magic liquid that never ages. Yet changing fluid on time is only half the story. Put the wrong fluid into a perfectly healthy gearbox, and your careful maintenance can become the problem. That mistake takes us straight to number 9. But before we get there, if you're gaining rare knowledge that can save you money and stress under the hood, click subscribe right now. Also, tell me in the comments how many miles are currently on your Mercedes. Number 9, never guess. Which transmission fluid your Mercedes needs. The bottle says automatic transmission fluid. Your Mercedes has an automatic transmission. That sounds simple, it is not. Mercedes has used many different transmissions, and those gearboxes can require very specific fluids. Even transmissions carrying the same broad 7G-tronic name can differ depending on version. Earlier 722. 0.9 units commonly use one Mercedes fluid specification, while later Plus versions use another. That means color is not enough. Brand reputation is not enough. A label saying works with many European cars is not enough either. You need the correct approved specification for the transmission actually fitted to your car. Transmission fluid is not just slippery liquid. It affects how internal clutches grab and release, how the gearbox behaves at different temperatures, and how well critical components are protected. The transmission was engineered around particular fluid characteristics. That is why I would never choose fluid based only on price or convenience for a gearbox I want to keep for hundreds of thousands of miles. Identify the transmission. Check the correct specification. Use quality fluid that genuinely meets it. Service records become extremely valuable here. If you buy a used Mercedes, you want to know what went into that gearbox before you owned it. Did a specialist service it? Was the correct fluid documented? Did someone simply top up a leak with whatever was available? Was the pan removed and the filter changed when required? Mystery maintenance is not reassuring maintenance. Tell me in the comments which Mercedes you drive and how many miles are on it. Keep an eye on the replies, because I want to see which transmission in this community has already traveled the farthest without a rebuild. Correct fluid gives you the right starting point, but even the perfect fluid can lose the fight when the transmission is forced to battle one enemy for too long: heat. Number 8 is where traffic, towing, hard driving, and poor cooling can quietly cook a gearbox that still feels completely normal. Number 8, control. Heat before it controls your repair. Bill, heat is one of the biggest enemies of automatic transmission life. That should change how you think about severe driving. Your transmission naturally creates heat whenever it works. Clutches engage, fluid moves, the torque converter does its job, and the car crawls through traffic. The problem begins when heat becomes excessive, or the car can no longer control it properly. Imagine towing a heavy load on a hot day. The road climbs, the transmission works harder. Or imagine repeated full-throttle acceleration followed by slow traffic with limited airflow. Now add a cooling system that is already struggling. Everything begins working against longevity. Excessive heat can speed up fluid breakdown. Once the fluid is badly degraded, its ability to protect the transmission suffers. That creates an ugly circle. More heat hurts the fluid. Weaker fluid handles stress less effectively. Wear increases. The driver may feel almost nothing until the gearbox finally starts behaving differently. That is why transmission longevity is connected to the health of the whole vehicle. Do not ignore an engine that begins running hotter than normal. Do not ignore cooling fans behaving strangely. Do not dismiss repeated coolant loss. Do not overload the vehicle beyond what it was designed to carry or tow. If you tow regularly, learn the limits and maintenance requirements for your exact Mercedes. The answer is not to avoid every hill or drive like there is an egg under the accelerator. It is to recognize hard use for what it is. If the car has been heavily loaded or driven aggressively, do not immediately repeat the punishment for no reason. Keep the cooling system healthy, respect towing limits, use the correct fluid, pay attention to temperature warnings. Those habits remove stress the transmission never needed. Here's where things become surprising. You do not need high speed or a trailer to abuse a gearbox. You can create unnecessary stress while moving at walking pace in a parking space. The next habit happens during rushed three-point turns, and most drivers have done it without thinking twice. Number 7. Stop selecting TUS, drive, and reverse. While the car is still moving, you are backing out of a parking space. Before the Mercedes completely stops, you move the selector into drive. The car catches. You accelerate away. It feels harmless. That does not make it a good habit. The same thing happens during rushed three-point turns. Reverse, still rolling backward. Drive, still creeping forward. Reverse again. Every time you do this, you ask the transmission and driveline to help reverse the direction of a vehicle that is already moving. Your brakes are designed to stop the car. Use them. Come to a complete stop, then select the opposite direction. That pause costs almost nothing. Transmission work does not. The habit seems harmless because the car usually obeys. Electronics can make the direction change feel smooth, but smooth does not mean stress-free. Let the brakes stop the vehicle first. That pause removes a job the transmission never needed to perform, while giving the driveline one less shock to absorb each time you park or turn around. Do it once and you will probably notice nothing. Repeat it thousands of times over years of parking and maneuvering, and you have added stress for no useful reason. The same principle applies to park. Do not select park while the Mercedes is still rolling. Stop first, then select park. Hills create another bad habit. Some drivers stop on an incline, select park, release the brake, and allow the vehicle's weight to settle against the parking mechanism. Then they return later and feel a heavy clunk when shifting out of park. Use the parking brake correctly so the transmission is not unnecessarily holding the vehicle's weight. Newer Mercedes models may handle these functions differently, especially with electronic systems, so follow the owner's manual for your exact car. The principle remains simple. Do not use transmission parts to do the brake's job. Stop with the brakes, secure the vehicle properly, then ask the gearbox to change direction. It sounds almost too basic for a video about extreme mileage. That is exactly the point. Extreme mileage is usually built from simple habits repeated correctly for years. Another one begins every morning. Your engine is cold, the transmission is cold, and the road ahead is clear. If that is when you normally demand full power, number 6 is aimed directly at you. Number 6, stop abusing the transmission before it is warm. You start the Mercedes. The road opens up. You press the accelerator hard. The engine wakes up instantly, and the transmission has to follow. Cold fluids do not behave exactly like warm fluids. The engine needs time to warm, and the transmission benefits from sensible driving while the entire drivetrain reaches a healthier operating temperature. That does not mean idling outside your house for half an hour. Start the car, give it a moment to settle, then drive. Just keep the early part of the journey gentle. Avoid unnecessary full throttle acceleration. Avoid repeated hard kickdowns. Let the gearbox shift normally while the fluids warm through ordinary driving. Once everything is ready, enjoy the car. High mileage ownership is often about removing stress that serves no purpose. Cold abuse is exactly that. Gentle starts protect everything downstream. Short trips make this more important. Imagine starting the Mercedes, driving aggressively for 5 minutes, parking, and allowing everything to cool again. Repeat that day after day. Those miles can be far harder than a much longer motorway journey where the transmission reaches normal temperature and stays there. Keep that in mind when buying used. Do not ask only how many miles. Ask how the car was used. Was it mainly city driving? Long motorway runs? Towing? Short journeys? Was it modified? Does it have a complete service history? A previous owner can hide a lot behind a freshly polished body. The transmission may still leave clues. A delayed engagement, a new vibration, a harsh shift, a shudder that was never there before. The dangerous habit is noticing one of those changes and deciding to keep driving until it becomes impossible to ignore. That is how a small problem earns enough time to become a large one. The next habit is where listening early can save you thousands. Number 5, stop ignoring the first change. In shift quality, your Mercedes has shifted the same way for years. Then one morning, something feels different. Maybe one shift becomes slightly harder. Maybe reverse takes another second to engage. Maybe the engine speed flares strangely between gears. Maybe you feel a shudder under light acceleration. Maybe the car pauses before moving. Then it behaves normally again. This is where owners make a dangerous decision and say, "I'll wait and see if it gets worse." Sometimes it will. That is exactly why waiting is risky. A transmission does not need to stop moving before it deserves diagnosis. Changes are information. Low fluid can affect behavior. A leak can lower the level. Electrical or control problems can change shifts. Valve body issues can create strange operation. The torque converter can produce shuddering or other symptoms. Not every unusual shift means the gearbox needs rebuilding. You want to find the cheap explanation before continued driving helps create an expensive one. The 722.9 is a good example. Low or incorrect fluid level can contribute to poor transmission behavior, while proper service and the correct fluid support long-term operation. So a strange shift does not automatically mean the gearbox is finished. Imagine instead that a leak slowly lowers the fluid level. The transmission begins shifting differently. You ignore it. The level falls further. Heat and wear increase. Now the original problem has company. That is how repair bills grow. The correct response is not panic. It is diagnosis. Scan the car for faults. Inspect for leaks. Check fluid condition and level using the correct procedure for that transmission. Have someone who understands Mercedes gearboxes interpret the symptoms before replacing random parts. If your Mercedes has ever developed a strange shift, tell me in the comments what the real cause turned out to be. Someone watching may be feeling the same symptom today, and your experience could push them to investigate before it becomes more serious. Catching the warning early can protect a transmission. But here is where things get dangerous. The service meant to protect your gearbox can actually hurt it when the wrong person performs it. Number 4 is why I would never hand a high-mileage Mercedes transmission to someone who treats every gearbox the same. Number 4, stop letting the wrong workshop service. A transmission service sounds simple: drain fluid, change the filter, refill, drive away. On many Mercedes transmissions, doing that job correctly requires more care. Correct fluid matters, correct quantity matters, the filling procedure matters. Fluid temperature can matter when the final level is set. The correct filter and pan components matter. Cleanliness matters enormously. This is not the place for improvisation. The technician needs to know which transmission is in the car and what procedure applies to it. The 722.9 again shows why. Earlier red fluid versions and later blue fluid plus versions do not simply share one universal fluid. They use different Mercedes specifications, and their recommended service intervals differ too. That is not trivia. It is information the person servicing your car needs before opening the pan. The 722.9 also does not give the owner the simple dipstick arrangement many people expect. Refilling requires the correct process and equipment. That is why I would rather pay a knowledgeable Mercedes specialist to perform one service properly than save a little money with somebody guessing. Cheap work becomes expensive when it has to be corrected. Worse, an incorrect service can create problems that were not there before. Overfilling is not good maintenance. Underfilling is not good maintenance. Wrong fluid is not good maintenance. Neither is replacing expensive parts because the symptoms were misunderstood. Ask sensible questions before authorizing the work. Which transmission is fitted? Which fluid specification does it need? Is the filter being replaced? How is the final level set? Have you serviced this gearbox before? A competent specialist should know what they are working on. Then comes an even trickier situation. You buy a high-mileage Mercedes. Nobody can prove when the gearbox was last serviced. Someone immediately recommends an aggressive flush to clean everything out. Someone else tells you touching the fluid will kill the transmission. Both sound certain. Number 3 explains why high-mileage gearboxes need diagnosis, not superstition. Number 3, stop treating every transmission service. The same. Here's the situation. You buy a Mercedes with serious mileage. The transmission still works. The service history is incomplete. Nobody can prove when the fluid was last changed. What now? One person tells you never to touch it. Another tells you to flush everything immediately. This is where blanket advice becomes dangerous. The condition of the transmission matters. Its symptoms matter. Its history matters. The exact gearbox matters. If a healthy transmission is due for maintenance, correct servicing, according to its requirements, makes sense. If the gearbox is already slipping badly, banging into gear, full of fault codes, or showing signs of serious internal wear, new fluid is not a rebuild in a bottle. It cannot replace worn friction material. It cannot repair damaged hard parts. It cannot erase years of abuse. That is why diagnosis should come before heroic maintenance on a badly neglected transmission. Inspect what can be inspected. Scan the control system. Look at the fluid and pan condition when appropriate. Understand the symptoms. Then choose the service approach based on what you actually found. This is also why the word flush needs context. A normal manufacturer-style service and an aggressive machine flush are not automatically the same thing. More force and more fluid do not automatically mean better maintenance. With an unknown high-mileage gearbox, I want the plan chosen by someone who understands that transmission and its condition. The goal is not to shock the system. The goal is to maintain it intelligently. Do not fear maintenance. Fear uninformed maintenance. There is a difference. If extreme mileage is your goal, the smartest approach is to build a clear service history early over many years instead of waiting until very high mileage to wonder what is inside the pan. Consistent care is easier than rescuing neglect, yet a perfectly serviced gearbox can still be abused from the driver's seat. Mercedes makes strong torque feel effortless, and that can make the next habit seem harmless. It is where horsepower starts collecting its payment. Number 2. Stop using full torque. Like the transmission is indestructible. Mercedes makes acceleration feel easy. Press the pedal. The gearbox drops a gear. The car surges forward. Everything feels smooth and controlled. That smoothness hides the work happening underneath you. Every transmission has limits. Internal clutches have to hold. The torque converter works. Gears and shafts carry force. Heat has to be controlled. Repeated hard launches and constant full throttle kickdowns increase stress. Enjoying your Mercedes is not the problem. You do not need to spend 500,000 miles afraid of the accelerator. The problem is unnecessary abuse. There is a difference between using full power to overtake and launching from every traffic light because you enjoy the shove in your back. Modified cars deserve even more respect. An engine tune may add a lot of torque. Guess which component has to deal with that torque? The transmission. Transmission control tuning can also change shift behavior. Sharper, quicker shifts may feel exciting, but aggressive shift strategies can increase stress and clutch wear. Power always has a price. If longevity is the priority, keep modifications sensible. Understand the gearbox's limits. Keep the fluid and cooling system in excellent condition. Do not repeatedly demand maximum effort when there is no reason. Towing deserves the same respect. Stay inside the limits of your exact vehicle. Heavy loads create more work. More work creates more heat. More heat makes correct maintenance even more important. Before number 1, make your final call. Which habit do you think kills Mercedes transmissions fastest? Tell me in the comments and give me the reason. Then compare your answer with this final habit, because the final mistake is not old fluid, hard acceleration, heat, or a bad service. You can follow almost every rule in this video and still lose the gearbox if you ignore one tiny clue. The warning may begin with a spot on the driveway small enough to hide beneath one finger. Number 1. Never ignore a transmission. Fluid leak 1 drop. That is all it takes to begin the mistake. You notice a tiny oily mark beneath the Mercedes. The transmission still shifts perfectly. You wipe the driveway. A week later, another spot appears. You tell yourself you will check it at the next service. That is how a cheap leak can begin threatening an expensive gearbox. Automatic transmissions depend on the correct amount of fluid. Not roughly enough. Not, there is still some inside. The correct level. Too little fluid can hurt lubrication, cooling, and the pressure the gearbox needs to operate correctly. That turns a leak into more than a cleanliness problem. It becomes a countdown. The fluid is going somewhere. Find out where. The pan may be leaking. A seal may be involved. A line or connection may be responsible. The exact source varies by transmission. The owner's response should not. Do not ignore it. Do not drive for months while watching the stain grow. Do not pour random fluid into the transmission because you assume it must be low. Diagnose the leak, repair it correctly, set the fluid level using the proper procedure, then make sure the leak is actually gone. This matters even more because checking fluid level is not simple on every Mercedes transmission. An owner can lose fluid without knowing how much has disappeared. By the time shift quality changes, the gearbox may already have spent too long operating under poor conditions. Remember the earlier warning signs. Delayed engagement plus a leak is not coincidence to ignore. A new shutter plus a leak is not something to watch for another 6 months. The transmission is giving you information. Use it while the message is still cheap. That is the real secret behind extreme mileage. There is no miracle additive. There is no single service that makes a Mercedes transmission immortal. 500,000 miles without a rebuild is an extreme target, and no honest mechanic can guarantee it. What you can control is how much unnecessary damage the transmission suffers on the way there. Build a service history, use the correct fluid, control heat, stop completely before changing direction, drive gently while the drivetrain is cold, investigate new shift behavior, use a workshop that understands the exact gearbox, treat neglected high-mileage transmissions according to their real condition instead of internet superstition, respect the torque, fix leaks early. None of those habits is exciting. That is exactly why they matter. A rebuild is dramatic. Preventing one is boring. The owner who reaches huge mileage is usually the one who became very good at boring maintenance. Keep records. Write down the mileage of every transmission service. Record the exact fluid used. Keep invoices for filters, pans, seals, and leak repairs. If control components or the torque converter ever need work, document that too. A high-mileage Mercedes should have a timeline, not a mysterious past. Between services, learn how your own car normally behaves. How quickly does drive engage? How quickly does reverse engage? How does it shift cold? How does it shift warm? Has a new vibration appeared? Is there fresh fluid under the car? Does it suddenly hold gears differently? You do not need to become a transmission engineer. You only need to recognize change. That gives you an advantage no warning light can replace. The expensive transmission failure gets all the attention. The decisions that helped create it may have happened years earlier. Old fluid, wrong fluid, too much heat, direction changes while rolling, cold abuse, a warning symptom nobody investigated, a poor service, too much torque, a leak somebody kept ignoring. Make the boring decisions while the gearbox is still healthy. They are far cheaper than trying to rescue it after the damage is already done. Thanks for watching. If you found these Mercedes transmission tips helpful, let us know in the comments. Want to see the Mercedes maintenance mistakes that can destroy an otherwise reliable car? Click the video on the left. And if you don't want to miss more Mercedes tips, hidden problems, and money-saving car guides, hit that subscribe button.